Do you know why I named you Shadow? Because without light, there's only darkness. But a shadow will show you where to find the light.
Maria's line from Shadow Generations is a perfect metaphor to describe how fans have felt for the past 2 decades, and how they felt upon Shadow Generations' release. Sonic has been in a dark period over the 2010s era. Repeatedly poor games and long waits between releases has left fans constantly disappointed. Games released in this period, and even games released before, had never really felt like a complete package. With polished story and gameplay all feeling half-baked, the franchise's reputation had plundered, especially due to titles such as Sonic Forces, Sonic Lost World, and Sonic Boom. But Shadow Generations is different. While Sonic Frontiers changed the trajectory of the franchise, it still got some of these elements wrong. Whereas Shadow Generations has got everything right. It showed us Sonic Team are more than capable of creating a complete experience. It gave us hope. However, this is not the franchise's peak. Or alternatively speaking, this game is barely scratching the surface of what Sonic Team can achieve. While this may be the best entry we've had up until this point, Sonic Team can do so much more than this. We have been drip-fed a fraction of what we can expect. The franchise has so much more to offer than just this. Almost every aspect of Shadow Generations is extremely well polished. Stages, animations, story, gameplay, controls, all individually are the highest quality this franchise has ever seen. The animations alone between Sonic Frontiers and Shadow Generations are night and day. These animations really make the characters come to life. There's little to no jank like we usually get, it controls well, and the game feels extremely smooth. The total length roughly comes in at 2 to 4 hours long. Shadow Generations is a pretty short game, but for it to only be that long and to review as well as it has been with 8s and 9s across the board is almost absurd. The Sonic franchise has been sitting on a goldmine of potential over the past 20 years. Ever since the Sega-Sammy merger, the company has disregarded how much money they could be making off the Sonic the Hedgehog brand. Uninspired games are being rushed out the door, and Sega are constantly giving Sonic Team impossible deadlines and not enough budget. This is where the problem lies. Sega. Sonic Team has always had potential, but games being given strict deadlines without the funding they require never really bodes well for making a good game. Sonic Team are usually the ones under fire from the fanbase if a game is poor quality, but because of these reasons, it's really out of their control. Let's look at Sonic Frontiers. Sonic Frontiers was credited as one of the best Sonic games in the past 20 years, and I completely agree. It introduced new concepts such as the open zone. The open zone has quickly cemented its place into the franchise, and even feels like you're playing the opening to Sonic CD at times. The boss battles were iconic, especially with the soundtrack, but I digress. Sonic Frontiers was Sonic Team's way of saying, we promise to do better. This is the new era of Sonic. And you could really feel that when playing the game with how different it was from Sonic Forces. On top of that, the Final Horizon DLC finally gave us multiple playable characters, which was highly requested for over 17 years. However, like previous Sonic games, Sonic Frontiers had its issues. The open zone on its original reveal looked empty. It was almost like assets had been randomly placed into the environment without ever really trying to incorporate them into the design of the zone. The cyberspace stages were rehashes of stuff we'd seen before, reusing level designs and textures. While the open zone felt good, after the third island everything just kind of felt the same, reused even. It was evident the deadline was nearing and the budget was running out towards the end of the game, so they panicked and quickly reused assets. And the final boss was just... So it was quite clear Sonic Frontiers really needed a bit more development time, which is something Iizuka had to fight Sega over, with Sega wanting to originally release the game in 2021. But why am I even mentioning Frontiers? All the issues that are present in Frontiers are all gone in Shadow Generations. There's no randomly placed objects in the open zone. Instead, you're presented with a giant playground with all the elements such as rails and structures actually tying into the level design. And the levels aren't Okay, let me rephrase that. The returning levels have unique stage design and feel fresh. Shadow Generations is one of the very few Sonic games that takes what works in the previous title and builds upon it, whilst attempting to fix what doesn't work. Previously with bad reviews, Sonic Team would have just scrapped the whole game concept and tried something new like we saw with Lost World. While Shadow Generations is the next mainline game after Frontiers, we already know a Frontiers sequel is being worked on. Shadow Generations is the side project that was developed by a smaller team, while the main team work on Frontiers 2. Sonic Team knows it's going to be a long wait for the sequel to Frontiers, and that we're all wondering how they'll handle the problems that were raised with the first Frontiers entry, and Shadow Generations feels like their way of showing that while we wait. This is only the start of what Sonic Team are capable of achieving now that there's been some obvious restructuring to their approach. We're 2 games into this new era, and both titles from Sonic Team have been dubbed the best Sonic game in the past 20 years. So imagine what a Frontiers sequel could do, providing it uses all the good elements of the first game and the good elements of Shadow Generations.
Father?
That's my girl.
We'd have to see consistency throughout the Frontiers sequel like Shadow Generations has provided. Granted, Shadow Generations is 2 to 4 hours long, whereas the next game will likely be around 20 hours long. So it's easy to see why Shadow Generations has been well polished, because there's less of it to be worked on. This is my main concern for the next game, as we don't want to see the same fall off Frontiers had after the third island. The open zone issues have been fully addressed in Shadow Generations. If the next game had the large open zone of Frontiers, with paths being implemented into the map the same way Shadow Generations has, then I think Sonic Team will have hit the nail on the head with the open zone. You could even have themes to this. A city-themed open zone would really help pull this off. Or maybe another island theme, but smaller and more thought out. Multiple playable characters is a must for the next game. Sonic, Tails, Knuckles and Amy are an obvious choice here, but imagine if Shadow got his own side story like we've seen with Sonic X Shadow Generations. I don't think they would do this, but one of the things that Shadow Generations also did well was make Shadow feel different to Sonic in terms of playstyle. In Sonic Forces, he was clearly just a reskinned Sonic, but the Doom powers in Generations really help him feel unique, and that's something they should hold on to. Cyberspace could potentially be one of the best elements of the game providing it returns. If the level design was the same quality as Shadow Generations, I think some players' main focus would be exploring and trying to find more cyberspace gates. It would almost feel like you've got 2 games in one package. If cyberspace stages were all original and didn't reuse themes and designs, then this would be one of the first games since Sonic Unleashed to not be nostalgia driven. It's been a problem with the franchise that nostalgia has been the selling factor for years now, and it's time to let that go and have everything original. Brand new original experiences with every game is something they should set out for with every entry. Animation should be just as good as Shadow Generations as well. It was almost jarring seeing Shadow so well animated because it's something we're not used to. We're yet to see Sonic look this good, so I can't wait to see this. Obviously the Titan fights were extremely well executed. There's not really anything I'd change here, but bring back Kellen Quinn for sure. If Shadow or another character takes on a Titan, I think that should play out a little differently. I'd love to see Kellen Quinn do songs exclusively for Sonic, whilst introducing other singers for other characters. Unique singers for each character's bosses would be a really strong way of portraying their personality through song. Lastly, the Chao Garden. It's something we've been begging for so many years now, and I think we're close to getting it. Remaking every Chao model just for them to be collectibles in Sonic Generations doesn't sit right with me. Spending so much time and money remaking every model for something so minuscule doesn't really make sense, so there's got to be more as to why Sonic Team did this. With the upcoming Chao Tales animated series and the Chao's appearance in the Sonic Movie 3 trailer, I think it's quite obvious there's a push for Chao to be reoccurring throughout the franchise. Frontiers 2 doesn't necessarily have to pull all of this off, as some elements such as the Chao Garden are just a nice added bonus, but if the quality is just as good if not better than Shadow Generations, then I think the review scores could be insane for this title. Iizuka has said previously that they're striving for Sonic to surpass Mario in quality. I personally feel Shadow Generations is on the same level of quality, however they just need to stay consistent to go higher. It's obvious the love and care for Sonic is there from Sonic Team. I don't believe it ever went away, I think it's more Sega's input that has messed them around over the years. The fans have always seen the potential in this franchise. Sometimes it's not even the ideas that are the problem, it's the execution. But Sonic Team have promised to deliver on every entry from now on. They included a secret message in Frontiers to let the fans know that they're aiming higher than ever. How do we know this? We'll take a listen.